Hey, morning, G.
Morning.
Should we get started?
Yeah, let's get started.
Okay. So since like today we have 3 agenda items. So for the first one is from James. Automatic populating the device nodes by the device signal. So hey James.
Hey Gilbert.
Do you want to share your screen or you want to just use my screen for the Google Doc?
I'm happy to use your screen. I mean, I think the people who are here this morning have probably seen. Maybe Chun hasn't seen this doc yet, but I know you and G have both looked at it. And
no, I haven't.
So basically, my requirement, my end requirement is to make dev KVM available in containers, and we don't run containers as root, and we don't grant like cap make node or any elevated privileges for these containers. So originally I thought that we could do this just by modifying the cgroups devices isolator, and I went pretty far down that path and had working code, but it was really ugly, mainly because there's a lot of conceptual mismatches around how the cgroups subsystems expect things to work. They expect things to work on a base at the root of the container tree, but really for this application, we only want it to be per container. So That was my initial approach, and I ended up abandoning that. And at that point, I felt it was worth writing this design doc just to kind of share the background of what I'd explored. The easiest thing to do here is to mount dev tempfs. That totally works, but you want to get one dev tempfs instance across the whole system, which makes it kind of unattractive in production, really infeasible. You can't. So what happens is if you modify the dev tempfs in any container, that modification is going to show up in all. So that kind of rules it out for any kind of container orchestrator. So I talked briefly about the container, about the cgroups devices whitelist. Theoretically, I think it makes sense, but in practice, the implementation is just too gnarly, and the mismatched assumptions in the systems make it a pretty awkward approach. So what I've got now is a patch series which is out for review, which implements a Linux devices isolator. And it actually is really simple. It consumes the same allowed devices that the cgroups devices isolator consumes, and it stages the device nodes in a per container run directory, and it bind mounts those in when you actually launch the container. Staging the devices into the container run directory allows, that's necessary because that's the only way to guarantee that you have the correct privileges to be able to create the devices, and that you're able to create the devices with the right access control policy. So whether it's read-write or read-only for the container. The code's fairly simple. It's fairly well confined, so I think it's a much better approach than the other two. For my immediate purpose, simply making the allowed devices available in containers is enough, but I think we can extend this approach to allow schedulers to have per container control over which devices are allowed and available. We would just need to integrate the new isolator a bit more deeply with the cgroups devices isolator. The GPU stuff already does that, so maybe we can kind of abstract those or condense that.
Yeah, I think okay, so so just one question: are you going to turn on this isolator by default?
No.
No. Okay, so
not at this time. So I think
okay.
if we go down the path of kind of integrating it more deeply with API, then it probably makes sense to turn it on by default. But that's not on my. I don't have a patch that does that. And
okay. The reason I mentioned this is because I think for some of the devices like DEV now, DEV random, DEV like those standard devices that every container needs to use. And right now we do that in like launch.cpp, which is not the right place. If we move to those line into the Linux device isolator, that means we have to turn on this isolator by default.
Yeah,
So
I think that's a good direction. So I think a next step for the Linux devices isolator might be to construct /dev as a whole, as a single unit. So currently the way it works is it's going to do a bind mount per device. But if we take the complete control of /dev into Linux devices, then we can, instead of having multiple bind mounts, we would just do one, and we would construct the whole thing. So I think that makes sense.
Okay.
It's just like more. So it's just a bigger change.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Later.
You can always do that incrementally. Okay, so another question is like, so the separation between this one and the cgroup device isolator is, so the cgroup device isolator is going to be responsible only for allowing those device number to show up to be able to be accessed from the container. That's it. It has nothing to do with the device node creation.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah,
I like that.
So in this first patch series, if you have them both, they'll work together automatically because they're both looking at the same agent flags.
Right.
In the future, when we extend the Linux devices, we'll need to add some code to have it like explicit cooperation, I think, just in a similar way to how the NVIDIA GPU isolator works.
Yeah, so some comments about Windows. Did you see that comment? If I find a lack of documentation supporting the fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like that.
Yeah.
What I took from that is that this specific approach isn't going to work with Windows, which
it's
I guess
called
doesn't surprise me. I'm assuming that all these devices is pretty Linux specific.
Yeah, and also it's called like Linux/device isolator, so it's pretty specific to Linux.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So which means the new protocol field in the container launch info is gonna be Linux specific.
No, it's just additional mounts, right? It's not like
actually, since I wrote this originally I had a container launch info, but the current patch doesn't have them at all. So what happens now in the patch series is that the container launcher just looks in the devices directory and it mounts things that it finds, and it bind mounts things that it finds there. So it turned out that although in my original series I added a device info to container launch info, I threw that away as I went.
Okay, gotcha.
Does this isolator apply to other Unix-like systems as well?
No. So we don't have any support for, we don't really have any chroot support for any other Unix-like systems. Nothing's going to actually work.
Okay, got it.
So I mean, theoretically, like, you know, there's in the container launch, it will, if you're not on Linux, it will do a chroot, but it doesn't populate the device. It doesn't populate the directory or anything. So it's hard to imagine how that could possibly work.
All right, sounds good.
I've been thinking that this new isolator may help with block device support for the storage, right?
Yeah, so definitely, I think, yeah, we need to think a bit on that, because I think the block volume support. So basically, the problem we're trying to solve is we want to allow some block device to be accessible from the container and bind mount somewhere in the container. Well, yeah, I think the same problem. We can potentially just leverage that, but I don't think we have a way right now to like ask one isolator to tell the other isolator what to do.
What do you mean by tell? Why do we need?
Like you have to inform this isolator saying that, hey, you have this additional device you want to expose in the container.
Yeah, that's similar to what we do in Linux file system isolator, right? It looks at the resource for the device and figure out you need to mount this additional.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So you're saying like this isolator, if it's aware of the resources, it can also enable those access.
Yeah, I'm thinking
okay.
about
And also
that.
need to do that for the C group device isolator too, just make sure that the device number is enabled. But yeah, I think we should change both to support block volume if we want to do that.
Got it.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a big change. This should be pretty straightforward.
That kind of cooperation with mounting things also I think some of Jason's patches will help us there, because right now we don't have really good ways to make sure that they're doing container mounts in the correct order. And I think Jason's patches
so we should let Jason's patch
improve the situation for that.
Yep. Yeah, we should definitely let Jason's patch first. Okay, this sounds good.
Yeah. I'm here, and I've already changed like the chain and removed from the refactoring, and then So
okay, that sounds great.
You can look at it.
Yep. Yeah, that's my plan today.
I'm working on. I'm working on the tests for that, and in parallel. So you can still look at the patches first, and then I will look at I'll submit the patches later.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
So another thing for James. So once you have the idea on the agent flag change and all the framework API change, as well as the internal protocol change, could you add it to the doc and share it with the mailing list for any API potential change, and people could comment on that in the email thread.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
So the only API change will be that operators will be able to specify the new Linux devices isolator. I'll also write operator documentation for the main website too.
Yeah, and I believe from the conversation, from the discussion in the doc, so are you going to introduce the both option, like including the static and dynamic?
Not in this patch series. So I think that we want to do that eventually, because like OCI spec has a way to specify devices. So doing it per container with API is kind of probably a medium-term direction we want to follow. But I don't know that I'm going to get scheduled to work on that, and I don't have like immediate plans to do it.
Yeah, the API part is kind of a little weird, because like, how does the user knows about the device path for a particular agent? It's kind of a little, I think it makes sense for like dev KVM, but probably doesn't make sense for things like SDVBA, SDVB1, SDVB2, something like this.
Yeah, it's very
SDV, because it's the naming itself is very random, right? I mean, it depends on the machine, and when you're launching a task using a scheduler, like you don't know exactly what's the naming of those devices on each machine. So I
can imagine. I mean, definitely, I think the use cases for like standalone containers, or if you're doing I forget the Kubernetes terminology.
Static pod.
Not the one where you get it on every agent.
Yeah, daemon pod. Yeah, that's static pod, right?
So I think for those kind of pods, for those kind of things, it makes
sense.
More sense. Otherwise, maybe you're tending to map in really common stuff like dev loop, right?
Yeah, I mean, if the naming is standard, then it's okay. But if the naming is like not standard, then I don't know if framework is going to use that. Like, so that I think that's the reason like Kubernetes API don't have that. That's one of the reasons they don't have that in their API for containers. So yeah, but we need to think more on this.
Makes sense. So, do we have any other questions about the Linux device isolator?
No, I think that sounds good.
Okay. So, okay, the next. Deprecate the command executor. So, I think it's Jens again. Hey, Jens?
Yeah, I have a half a patch set to work on this. It's out there for feedback. It's basically if anyone wants to shepherd it or like provide any feedback on the approach that I've taken, then I'll be happy to spend a bit more time on it.
Yeah, so James, I haven't looked at the patch, but just one question. Do you have a flag to turn this on and turn this off?
No, the review is kind of proof of concept stage. So
okay.
If we agree that we want to do this and we agree that this is the right direction and all those things, then I can add, I can spend time and add a flag. I think we would need a flag.
We should definitely have a flag.
Just probably the right approach is like, turn on the flag, like have the flag off by default, and then we'll have to go through a whole deprecation cycle.
Right. So we still need to keep the old code path, but if the flag is turned on, then the launch of task will go through the default executor. I'm pretty sure we need to do that.
Almost all the work is making sure the tests work in both cases.
I see. Okay, I see. That makes sense. Like having all the tests working is okay.
I still regard the deprecation gonna be hard. The one thing I'm not sure it is like whether or not we could eventually deprecate it. Because
why?
even we have a long deprecation cycle, the deprecation of the command executor is gonna break a lot of users, especially for the user who build the tooling on top of old Mesos version. For example, like some tooling, some user they build like the script, which go to always read the standard out, standard error from the sandbox.
Okay.
Sandbox.
So you're saying like the logging stuff that might break.
Yeah, I mean some tooling, like any tooling which gonna read on from the sandbox, they need to change it. So as far as I know, many Mesos users they build their own tooling or script to like do some parsing from the container log. So they have.
But that's the purpose of the deprecation cycle, right? You ask people, say, hey, this is bad. We know it's bad, and we'll move away from that. But we're going to be backwards compatible. So that's the reason for the deprecation cycle. And we have this new support. Please try that. If that satisfy your need, please migrate your tooling. And we're going to have a long deprecation cycle. But eventually, we're going to deprecate that and remove that thing. From the code base.
Yeah. So my concern is like it. Firstly, initially the deprecation cycle is gonna be long. The second thing it is it's very likely all the Mesos user they have to change something. And the third thing it is like this is a big change for user in behavior. So maybe we should like consider once any of us have cycle, maybe we should consider like list out all the semantic change like environment inheritance, like sandbox layout, and any potential change or semantic change for the user. So that might be helpful for them to update.
Yeah, I think listing the differences sounds good. Like we just have a Google Doc and trying to list all the things that we think it might change. But yeah, I disagree with not doing deprecation and just keep that. I think that's a bad thing. We should get rid of that. And it's just some legacy stuff, and people depends on those legacy behavior. And if we don't do anything, we're gonna never move away from those things. So we should start doing that and have a long deprecation cycle to allow people to migrate from that model and move to the new one.
Yep, agree.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks for the patches. And
You're welcome.
Yeah, it has been attacked in the code base for a long time.
I guess who has cycle to review those chain? It's not just touching the containerizer part, it's also touching some of the agent part, I think. Yeah, I think that the question, I think that the problem here, we need to find some shepherd for this work. We all know this is important, but but sounds like it's not a priority for any of us.
I am booked for the next 3 weeks, so I'm not sure I could find time in the next 3 weeks, but I could seek for more cycle after that.
Yeah, also I think like providing some high level guidance is also useful. I think like James, you mentioned that it's not fully finished yet, it's just POC. But you want to know if that's down the right direction or not. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. I mean, I think it's at a point where we can see where it's going. So if everyone agrees that this is something we want to do, then I can try to work on it. But
yeah, and also like James,
I don't want to go and polish it up and finish it, and then only to find that we didn't really all agree in the first place.
Yeah, James, can you find someone internally at your company to review those patches, and you can commit yourself? Like after we agree that this is the right approach, like can you find someone that can review the patches, or you rely on like us to kind of review those patches?
I could probably ask Ian. I don't know if he's really
okay.
Well, I don't know what he's working on.
Okay. Okay.
So I was wondering that is it possible to make it more compatible to the command executor?
No, I mean, so Chung, I think the problem with that is the command executor, the way we launch containers in command executor is pretty high key, especially the command executor has a Docker image defined. the way we do that is by running the executor itself under root, and use the same launch helper to actually launch the container for the command executor, the task. But that creation of container does not go through the agent code, basically. It directly go to the launch helper. So what that essentially means is, from isolator's perspective, each isolator needs to be aware of this special case. If this is a command executor, I have to do isolation specifically if I know this is a command executor. Sorry, this is a command task. I need to do isolation for the task, not the entire thing, something like this. So like you can see every single isolator has a special case like this, which is not ideal. We want to move away from that model.
I see. Thanks. But for like sandbox, sorry.
So I was going to say also, it's not just the isolator, it's the testing too. So if you look at the tests, there's tons of tests which are like, oh, let's test for this thing with the default isolator and the default executor and the command executor, and like everything gets duplicated throughout the test.
Yeah, I'm not asking for like a full compatibility. It's more like, say, for sandbox paths or like some layouts. Can we make it like similar? Like, can we make some special case in the default executor to match the form behavior to make it easier for people to use debug executor?
Yeah, that would be pretty hard, especially like then it defeats the purpose of doing this change, because the whole purpose of this change is trying to do things in a unified way inside the agent, inside the isolator. But what you're saying is we still do special case for command task. Then what's the point of doing that refactoring and remove the command executor? So the whole purpose of that is trying to make things in a unified way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like special casing doesn't defeat the purpose of this work.
Yeah,
that's true.
And the discussion about the deprecation has been raised a while ago, and we have better to do it sooner than later.
Is there any like major objection to this deprecation? Like, did you guys see any major, like, or people just don't see that email? I didn't see, well, I guess people just didn't reply to the email or something like this.
I don't recall seeing a email.
Like strong objection. I know like some people might object to that. I know like they have a lot of tooling, but maybe they're not aware of that thing. That might break their tooling. I guess we need to be more explicit. Yeah, I think Gilbert, your idea is great. So let's be more explicit about the things that will change and list in the doc, and then send that to the user and warn them that this is happening. So there might be some pushback, and we'll see what we can do. But yeah, the project, I think we should try to eliminate that code path. It's extremely hacky.
Yeah, I totally agree. So even if we send out the email like this month or next month, so the actual deprecation gonna happen around the end of this year. It's gonna be like
that's fine. Have a long deprecation cycle is fine. So just need to start this work.
Yeah, what I mean here is like we should try to send it out earlier and give people the context, like what's gonna be potentially break.
Yeah, I think we need to add feature parity first, so they can have this agent flag first. They can make the switch, and then we give a long period and list the changes and ask them to change. I mean, we should start this work. TLDR.
Well, yeah, I agree with the transition. The thing is that when we list the difference or change, semantic change we're making, I just want to think. I just wish that we could think about what are the specialization which only happen locally and doesn't hurt a lot when we maintain the site, maintain the code base.
Yeah, so I think we can definitely do that. What you're saying is like, if we can do something very simple that it's very localized in a single isolator or something like that, it's not very like a big change, then maybe you can maintain some backwards compatibility regarding the behavior. Yeah, I agree if we can do that, but my feeling is it's very mean, I think mainly two things that people will see differences. One is the sandbox layout. That's one thing. The other thing is the C group layout. For freezer, I think only freezer, because for the rest of the C group system, it will be the same. Just the freezer, you have this nesting structure. These are the only two that I can remember. And also there's some health check differences.
Yeah, I think there might be more minors difference in between. For example, the environment, the executor environment might be.
Well, yeah, environment variable is, I mean, it's a tech debt anyway. We're fixing the issue. It's more like a bug that we inherit some of the executor environment to the task, which is a bug.
But the issue is like some user, they might be.
I know, they rely on this behavior. I know. So, but yeah, I think we should not, I mean, it's like people rely on some buggy behavior of Mesos, which we should move them away from this. Yeah, if you can write it down, like sandbox, C group layout, especially freezer, and also what? Health check, and yeah, environment variable. Yeah, these are the main four, I think.
Okay, so I think we can move for the next one, G.
So just with the command executor, does anybody, do you know of anyone who's actually using it, like as a production user? Because
for what?
My impression was that most people who are production users of Mesos are likely to be using custom executors. So
well,
we have a custom executor. So people do use the command executor in production workloads?
Because that's the default marathon.
Yeah, every marathon user rely on the command executor.
Yeah, so if you go to marathon, you're launching a container, by default is using command executor.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, so almost all the marathon users are using command executor right now. For the DCOS SDK users, they're using default executor right now. So both have production users. I would say like command executor has more production users than the default executor because that's the default marathon use.
Oh, right. Yeah, I didn't know that marathon used that.
Yeah, I think for large scale deployment like Twitter, Apple, I think it's all like custom executor. Even Uber, maybe it's custom executor.
Well, I think Twitter and Uber are both using Aurora, which means you get Firmos by default, right?
Yeah, but Uber has their own framework too. I don't know what the executor they're using.
I think they use the default one, if I remember correctly. But is Jason still here?
Yeah, Jason, can you talk to?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Do you know like what executor you guys are using right now?
So we're using Thermos right now, and we do also there's the default executor being used for Peloton, and we are considering also another like custom executor.
Okay. So you guys are using custom executor for Aurora and the default executor for Peloton.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I think I see both executor are being used heavily in different settings. Yeah, I think we should start this discussion. And probably Gilbert, if you do have some small cycle that just take a look at those patch, give some high level comments. Like for example, we need an agent flag for sure.
Yeah, sure.
And just give some high level comments to unblock James. And James, if you can find someone internally that can review the patch, that would be great too.
Okay, I'll give it a go.
Yeah. I think I mean this is like there's no controversial on like how I don't see any controversial issue on this. It's basically like this is something that we need to do. Just need to get it done.
Yep.
Okay. Do you want to move to the logger thing?
Yeah, I think we don't have any other comment on the deprecation. We all agree on that. So we just need to wait for more feedback from the community. So yeah, the loggers, it took you a while, G.
No, it's not a while, but yeah, okay.
A couple of days.
hold on. Let me actually share my screen. Can you unshare yours?
Oh yeah, sure.
So what I did, 1 second. Okay, share screen. Okay, see my screen? Did you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I did some change to the logger interface. It's mainly dispatch. That changed the logger interface. So the main change is actually, so if you look at the logger interface right now, so it used to be taking these 3 parameters, executor, info, sandbox, directory, and user. At the time when logger was written, it was specifically for the executor. It's not for like any of this, its task. Part of the reason is this command task issue where the tasks log is actually part of the executor's log. They go to the same std out and the std error. So that's one of the tech that I went to fix, part of that work. So yeah, it's very executor specific. So although like the logger also works for a nested container and a standalone container, but we don't have per container knobs for that. So the way that you can control logging behavior is by specifying some special environment variable that the logger can actually parse and do appropriate things. If you look at the module implementation inside the repo on the in-tree modules, that it looks into some specific environment variable to tweak the logger behavior. But as I said, previously it's only possible if you're dealing with an executor. Now the change I'm doing right now is make it general so that all the containers can benefit from this. And so the change is pretty simple, just changing these 2 fields to be the container config, which is a superset of all these informations. So the change itself is very simple. I might want to add another field here called container ID, but I haven't done that. I plan to do that right away next so that we don't have 2 changes on the module interface, because there's no way to get a container ID in the logger, but some logger do require the container ID. So that's the interface change. And I kind of changed all the in-tree modules to adapt to the new module interface. So the change is pretty simple because this struct has all the information that we have previously. So the change is pretty straightforward. Just find the right field and do the change. So if you have a custom logger so it will no longer work with the new version of Mesos, you have to change your logger to adapt to the new interface. Yeah, the rest of the change is pretty formality. There's nothing interesting. And also I update the change log about this new change.
So G,
yeah.
I have 2 questions. So the first one is like on the behavior before the change. So the logger module is per executor. So for let's say for default executor with nested containers, we have 2 nested containers. So how do we handle the log for those 2 separate containers inside of one executor?
No, previously logger will be applied to each container. So every single container launch will go through logger. So it's already the case that the logger works for each container, including the nested container or standalone container. Just the fact that to control the behavior for that logger for the container, it's only possible you can control that if the container is for executor. It's not possible you can control the behavior of the logger if the container is nested container or standalone container.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this patch make it possible to actually control the logger behavior per container. So even for standalone container or nested container, you can control the logger behavior because some of the logger that like DCOS build is like you can either dump to journal D or dump to sandbox or both. We want to control this behavior per container level, including nested container, standalone container.
Understand. So for the second one, it is about the container ID you mentioned. I guess right now for all the logger module, we don't use container ID, but possibly they might want to, like, for example, log more error message with the container ID.
Yeah, so one of the use case for that is like, I know like some logger dump to journal D And when you write to journal D, one of the entry you add to the log, one of the fields you add to the log entry, like container ID, so that you can do journal control filter by the container ID, so you can see logs for particular container IDs.
Yeah, so because the interface gonna be one type change, every time we change the interface, all the module builder, they have to do the corresponding change. So considering we already do it for 1.7 release, so should we do it?
I'll do that today, actually, the container ID. So I'm gonna add a new field called container ID. Then this interface will be exactly the same as the interface of the isolator prepare. So it will be exactly the same. Well, the return value is different, but the parameter will be the same, which is consistent with, which is pretty consistent with isolator.
Or we can add the container ID to the container config.
No. I think we shouldn't do that. That's a much bigger change. We'll just have a container ID here. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Any questions?
That's for me.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much what I want to share. Just want to let everyone know in case you guys have a logger module built, custom logger module. If you're not, then it's not applied to you. All right. I'll stop sharing my screen. That's it from my side.
Cool. Thanks, G.
Yeah.
Let me see. Do you have any? Oh, that's the last one. Okay. Any other things you want to discuss in the working group? Otherwise, we could stop the meeting earlier.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, I really want to land JSON's patches because I think it's real bugs.
So for those I do have some extra things in some related tickets, but I think we can go with those first.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, just in general, like if you guys have any, like, I know like you guys have a kind of like a small forking in your environment, any of the patches that, any of the issues you saw, it would be great that you can create at least some JIRA, let us know like what the issue is, so that we can, yeah, it would be nice to upstream all those bug fixes at the very least, to upstream.
I think we can leave this discussions offline, but I mean, just a brief mention about like the needs for the pre-exec and post-exec for the mount info. I think last time I proposed this, and G asked me why that's necessary, but like by looking at the secrets, and I do think we can definitely think about that as a model. So for the secrets, yeah,
it'll be if you have a concrete use case. Yeah, if you send out that use case, if that makes sense, I think why not.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I can put it in the ticket and then see, and we can discuss it over there.
Yep. That sounds good.
Sorry, can you mention that again? So that you want to preserve pre-exec and as a hook there?
So that's around the mounts. For some of the mount, you probably want to apply a bunch of shell scripts just in the context of those mounts, and that previously I was like Containerd or like libcontainer has this model, and each of the mount info, and they would have like the pre and post exact. And I proposed this to populate this over to the container like container mount info. And
yeah, I think that I think one of the use case for that. Yeah, I know like Containerd has this. At the time, I don't have a use case for that. That's the reason I didn't introduce that one. But I think there's one use case where I think about the secrets, right? So you in the mount info, you do a mount of the RAMFS because you want the secrets to be in memory. After you mount the RAMFS, you want to copy the secrets to that FS. And that step has to be, you cannot do in the prepare stage of the isolator because it's not being mounted yet. So that might be one of the use cases that we want to support. It will be much nicer we have this, because right now if you look at the secret isolator, it's pretty hacky. I think it just used like a move somehow.
Right.
I mean,
It's
anyway,
not really.
it's the same thing. It's using a move after the mount, and it's still using the pre-exec command, which is bad.
Yeah, I
So
think that we can leave this to a later patch, but this would be like a really ideal use case. Since prior and after the mount, and we do have some other work to do as in the show commands form.
Yeah. So is that secrets? I mean, do you guys have any other use cases for that, like post?
Actually, we do have teams proposing to use this isolator. And currently, it's not in the ideal state. So for us, it would be better to start looking at that. And I've been like refactoring the code around those isolators.
Yeah, I think at least for that secrets isolator, I think that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I know for a fact that Containerd has this too.
Right. Yeah. Let's put this in discussion in the task.
So if we separate, so right now, I think in both of our patch series, Jason, we're separating the mounts from the entering the chroot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once you do that, do you still need to do a per mount shell script, or can you just do all the shell scripts after all the mounts have been made?
So that really depends on the context in here, and like after that, I would say it's yes and no. Some of those secret things definitely has to be better done right after that.
Yeah, what I mean, Jason, what James saying is that we already have this pre-exec command. If we do that after we prepare all the mounts.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially.
I know what James means, but like I would say pre and after, so that's really happening in between, like the pre like in between the mount call, system call, and then right after that, prior to like chroot. But if you for all of those posts, when you do a chroot, then you don't really have the context anymore. You see what I mean?
Sorry.
So like the pre should be fine if we can hook all of the pre's prior to the mounts, and the isolator can generate that, but all of the posts that's not possible.
Oh yeah. So what I think one of the suggestions is maybe we have two, or like pre-mount or post-mount, but not like do that for each individual mount. I think what Containerd does is like for each mount info, you have a shell script. Is that?
Yeah, they have the like this at the really good granularity.
Yeah, so they basically define a shell script for an individual mount. Like you can do something before the mount and do something after the mount. So what I think what James is saying, like since we already have this thing globally, like you can already run some script right after. I don't know if it's after or before, but we can do both.
I think it's right now. I think it's after. Is it
prepare mounts?
Yeah,
I think
there's no this level of granularity. I would say most of the mounts don't need this, but like for the security and some other cases, they're definitely better have to be done there.
Yeah. I think so. I think I see two options. One is doing that for each mount. Like for each mount info, you can define some pre and after, like post exec commands. The other approach is you do that globally, basically using like before you prepare all the mounts, you can run some script, and after you prepare all the mounts, you can run some scripts, and each isolator can set each individual set those commands.
So these scripts are always defined to run on the host, right?
Yeah, so it's always run on the host.
So you never chroot. So for the post, you never chroot into the prepared mounts.
Right.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you chroot, and you really lost like all of the things on the host. And so, for example, like the secrets that got dropped onto the host, and then you don't have any place to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I see. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think we see two approaches. I think either both works. I mean, we can decide what to do because I think this is internal. I think we can decide what to do. It's not like super controversial.
Right.
Just like where do we put this command? Is it in the mount info or the container launch info? That's it.
Right. This is not like a public API as the
yeah. It's the internal API, so
yeah.
we can do any change if we want. Well, it's the module interface. I mean, it's isolator interface change. So it will break if you have a custom isolator, but we don't have backwards compatibility issue with isolators. Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Okay, Gilbert, do you have anything else?
I don't. I think
then that's it.
Yeah, that's it for the mailing. Thanks
everyone. See you guys in 2 weeks.
Cool. Thanks all. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. See ya.
Thank you. Bye.